if you have the wrong diseases or the wrong weeds in the soil, that soil has to be trucked away to a landfill. Extremely expensive and not really sustainable. So they came to us and said, you guys have this method of steaming soil. Can you help us in the construction business? So that's our, that's why we entered into that kind of business with big like stationary machine, which we place in the project, and use a front wheel loader to load the machine with soil, and then it goes through the machine, comes out in the other end, and you can put it wherever you want.
So Hans Kristian Westrum, thank you so much for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, so we started the conversation and I realized I hadn't pressed record. So it's always, sometimes it's interesting, the pre-call chat, and you mentioned that you found out about the show by a chat GPT search.
Yeah. And it was kind of interesting because we just moved into the vertical farming market. We have been working with soil before.
Yeah.
And I asked ChatGPT, what's the most popular show, like podcast for vertical farming? And you came up. Congrats.
That's good. It's always nice to know that SEO does work. So where's the home for you?
It's in north of Europe, in Scandinavia, Norway. So far from where you are at the moment.
I'm in Minnesota, so we get a lot of Scandinavians in Minnesota. I think because of the similar climate, lots of ice fishing and lots of dips in the lake. I took my first plunge in a frozen lake earlier this year, and it was, I don't know if it's normal for you, but it was a jarring experience for me.
Well, all about, taking a bath in cold water is a big thing these days, isn't it? And we are familiar with that.
Yeah. Did you grow up there?
Well, yeah. I'm born and raised in Norway, at the farm, of course, and that's the background. But living my whole life in Norway, yeah.
And so did you come from a farming background in your family?
Yes. My father was a farmer, but in Norway we have lots of small farmers. I mean, in the US you have both, I guess, but here there are many small farmers. And my father was one of the small ones, so he had, 2 jobs. So he had a farm in the evenings and stuff like that, and then he was on a regular job during normal days.
Yeah. I think what I've noticed as I've had these conversations, I speak to folks in indoor farming, but interestingly, a lot of them come from a traditional farming background. And I don't know if it's the same with you growing up, but there's a level of discipline and work ethic, I think, from growing up on a farm that you get. And I noticed that as a trend, and I wonder if that was like the same for you.
Totally. I mean, one of the reasons that I did not take my education in farming was that I saw how much work it was. I mean, these guys, and not very well paid either. So they worked really hard and more hours than, what's common today, I think. And, but there was, constantly on work, and the work at the farm was kind of the hobby, right?
Yeah. And so you went in a different direction. You went to business school.
Yeah.
What was your thought there when you went? Did you think you were going to be working in a different industry?
Well, yes and no. I think I have more talent in that direction. And in the same way as, I was not the oldest son of my father. So, it was natural that other ones took over the farm. Yeah. So it was many reasons that I didn't, continue in that direction. But I've always been fascinated by, the farming business. I mean, today I think it's fantastic to see, how even in my small garden, how one potato gets to 15 potatoes, and the whole natural agriculture thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. We were just chatting about in the pre-talk that I'm in Minnesota, and there's a lot of Scandinavians here. So it's, similar climates. But I think as someone who grew up in New York, and has lived in the city, New York City, I've lived in LA, there's an interesting quality of life that you come to appreciate more. We have a little bit more land now, so we're planting. And like you said, you're taking the eyes of the potatoes, putting them in the ground, and some magically like the potatoes appear. And it's really like, I think if you don't have that connection to your food, you just think that you go to the grocery store and food comes from shelves. You learn, my partner's father's a hunter. He's hunted deer. He's gone fishing in Alaska. He's hunted turkey. So it's given me just a newfound appreciation for the connection to food, which I think is something that kind of you were speaking to.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think also coming back to that. I mean, after many years of, growth and, very strong industries and industrial farming, stuff like that, I think that we have seen for the last 5 or 10 years that we are coming more back to natural agriculture, to understand the value of soil treat it well, because it's not going, I mean, soil is something that, you know, you don't get it back, first waste it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I imagine you had a lot of experience with the soil growing up. Is there any like memory that you remember as a child from the farm?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm used to, you know, spend vacations, stuff like that, working on that farm, even though when I was even more older, like 16, 17, 18. And that was also my first experience with steam, because my father started this to see that he had problems with the soil long before all the pesticides.
Yeah.
You know, today the pesticides industry is under pressure. A big list. In 2000, you had a big list of pesticides available. Today it's much more limited.
Yeah.
But still, even with that big list, there were like harmful organisms and things in the soil which the chemicals couldn't fix. So my father started to do, you know, lots of trials, finding new ways of combating those harmful organisms. And steam was one of the solutions that they tried out. So yeah, I spent many summers, you know, walking behind, you know, this very simple prototype where he actually was steaming the soil.
Where did that idea come from? Is that something that's like historically been done? I'm just curious where that idea
It's
comes.
really interesting, because when they started, I thought they was kind of pioneers, that they, you know, they were fantastic that they, you know, discovered this. But today, after working with this like for 10, 15 years now, I know that, you know, in the US and also in Europe, the farmers have been steaming soil since the 1800 something, 1880.
Wow.
You can find old books. I mean, when you used to have libraries, you can find books there.
Yeah, I remember that.
You can find books there about, you know, lots of research that's been done. And actually, I have been working quite closely with a professor in UC Davis in California, which is called Stephen Fenimore. They call him Steam Fenimore. And he has been working on steam almost his entire career in UC Davis. So this is something that people know works.
And what was the mechanism? I'm sure there's pictures of some of the devices from there, but how is the steam being generated, and how is it being like, was it being piped into the soil?
The steam generators is more or less the same as they were in the 1890s. You know, it's not much different. It's the same thing. You boil water.
The steam engine.
So, but everything around that, I mean, everything from how we inject the steam into the soil and all of that, that's more, you know, high tech, and sensoring and how to document everything, and, you know, the computer system to steer everything. All of that is brand new, but the basics of the old steam generator are exactly the same.
So talk to me about the story of Solely Steam, and how, you know, you got involved and decided that this is something that you wanted to come back to the farm, so to speak.
Well, I think it's a fascinating story, because I went to university to study economics, but I followed their trials with the steam machine every summer. So I came back even in weekends to see, you know, because it worked. I remember they were steaming with this simple equipment. They steam like a 3 meter broad, like a channel back in the farm. And that 3 meter broad stripe stand black soil for year after year. The weed come on both sides, and, you know, it's spread in by wind, stuff like that after a while. But you can see that stripe for like maybe 8 to 10 years. So it really could fight the weeds and also other organisms in the soil. And the interesting part is that when you plant something in it, when the soil cools down, and you can plant, you know, carrot or strawberries or potatoes, whatever you want, you'll see that it grows even better than before you steamed. So that was the beginning, and I followed them, and I helped them since I had my education within economics. I helped them with some funding, and they made pretty good prototypes based on, you know, 3 farmers with, you know, they had some skills within, you know, fixing on machines, stuff like that. So they made some simple prototypes, and I helped them with the financing. And they even involved some researchers, some universities, to come and check the soil and see that it worked very well. The pesticides were, the weeds were gone, the harmful organisms were gone, and things were growing. So they came to a certain level, and they had some kind of simple prototype. And then my father died in 2013, 2014, in that, around there. So, and then I had my other career. So I didn't pay much attention to the actually soil steam business at that time. But in 2016, my father-in-law retired in Sweden. My wife is Swedish.
Okay.
And he was one of the best welders in Sweden. So he was responsible for lots of the welding at Rolls-Royce factory, where they make the jet engines.
Oh, wow.
And the
Yeah.
funny thing was that at the moment when he quit, Rolls-Royce was almost about to have to stop production because they didn't have anyone with good enough skills. So
Wow.
me and my wife were sitting and discussing and saying, it's ironic, right? Because you're on top of the career, you have all this knowledge, you have all the experience, you have done all the wrong things and the right things, and then you stop working. And then my
Yeah.
wife said, this is exactly the same thing as happened with your father. They had built up something, everything was there, and it stopped. And then I said, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Maybe we should pick it up. And that's what, then I called up my father's two old friends and they started up all over again in 2017. And they said, we have been working on this for 15 years and you're, old men. We can back you up,
Yeah.
we can give you all the knowledge, but you have to run the show and fine, do the
Wow.
work. So,
So they had stopped the company. They had
right,
ended the
yeah.
company.
So they
Wow.
didn't have much. They put a lot of effort into it, all their money almost, and lots of hours.
Yeah.
And they said, we think it's a stupid idea to leave it, but we cannot, continue
Yeah.
work as we have done. So if you take it, to the next level, we will back you up, but you have to do the work.
Hmm. Did you know what you were signing up for?
No idea. I guess if you talk to like people who, start to develop, nobody has developed these machines before, right? So if I
Yeah.
knew that, I think we never started, but we thought we were pretty close, right? So that's why,
Yeah.
we were hanging in there.
What was that conversation like with your father-in-law? Because he had retired, and I thought he probably thought he was going to be like relaxing on the beaches
Yeah.
now and just enjoy.
No, I remember he was, offered a hell of a lot of extra pay and stuff like that, but he was finished. He was retired. But they found a
Yeah.
solution, so he had an overlapping thing. So Rolls-Royce are still making the jet engines.
Oh, really? Okay. And how helpful was he in helping you understand what the new version would be?
Well, when we started, with a new team, we involved like
Yeah.
some good engineers. We had some 3D CAD modeling guys. We had some software guys. We had some mechanics. So we brought in a wider
Yeah.
team, to sit down together with the old farmers and discuss,
Yeah.
how should we develop this kind of machine? We know this work,
Mhm.
we know this work. What's not working? How can we take it forward? So we established this working group and started to make at that time we were still working a lot on, open fields. So steaming strawberry
Yeah.
fields or whatever, but
Yeah.
and made big, huge machines, which actually did the job, but still not anything ready for serial production. There were still prototypes building, right?
Yeah. And so those early machines, were they self-propelled or how did
It was
they navigate the
no,
field?
one guy had to be there and control them. So, but
Okay.
they could drive by themselves, but you have to control them and turn them around, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
steaming is a fantastic way of heating up soil, but still, it's so much soil, and the capacity of a machine it moves pretty slowly, right? So
Yeah.
it's not very economic to have one operator and buy the machine. So the ones that you have in our engineers are working on now are robots, right? But they
Yeah.
are again regulated. So we understood on the way that it's a big market for treating soil to get rid of all these harmful organisms and weeds and everything in open fields.
Yeah.
But it's still
Mhm.
a lot of work to do to develop the correct machine. So, and at the
Hmm.
same time, we were contacted by some of the biggest road builders, road and railroad builders here in Scandinavia, because they had problems with soil in their projects. So in big road projects,
Oh, wow.
if you have the wrong diseases or the wrong weeds in the soil, that soil has to be trucked away to a landfill. Extremely expensive and not really sustainable. So they came to us and said, you guys have this method of steaming soil. Can you help us in the construction business? So that's that's why we entered into that kind of business with big stationary machine, which we place in the project. And you use a front wheel loader to load the machine with soil. And then it goes through the machine,
Okay.
comes out in the other end, and you can put it wherever you want.
I bet that's a market you hadn't even thought of.
That's how it is. We started to work. It's a funny thing because we started to work with farmers, in open fields.
Yeah.
And then this thing take us to the construction business, which we now deliver machines to. But when we had this machine for construction business, some of the big indoor farmers in Europe came to us and said, that machine treats soil. Couldn't that machine also treat substrates? That was a long start to get into the substrate or vertical farming business.
Oh, that's so interesting. I'm curious about the timing of when you treat the soil. Do you treat it before you plant it, or can you be planting the crops? Because it would
Yeah,
kill anything that
you're
was
right.
planted already, right? Okay. You have to do
Yeah, one day or
pre-planting.
two before.
Okay.
I mean, the nature of soil and also substrate is that stores the heat pretty well, so it keeps warm for. Soil is better than substrate, but the soil can go from 90 C down to like 20 C in 24 hours. So the day after,
Okay.
2 days after, you can grow whatever you want in the soil, but you have to wait for that. And you cannot steam the soil while the plantings or vegetables are there.
Yeah, you kill the
Very well.
plants. Well, now I'm thinking about my own garden. Are people doing this at the residential level now too? Or?
We had quite a few people contacting us about that as well. So there are people that have almost as big problems as the farmers with their private homes
Yeah.
and gardens.
Well, every little, as a gardener, every little bit you can do helps. And we plant sometimes and we get the weeds and you're like, oh, I got to get in there with the weeds. And, if they sell vacuum cleaners that have the vacuum cleaner companies like Bissell, they sell steam cleaners. And it seems like that could be a short jump, to create a soil steam.
But we have now customers in Norway, which and now Norway, Sweden, and in Northern Europe, which have natural construction soil, which they
Yeah.
always steam before they deliver, because then they can guarantee to the customers that this is weed free. You don't have any weeds in this side, and that's a pretty strong market for us actually.
Smart. Yeah. All these different markets that you didn't envision when you started.
That's it.
So I'm curious, when they came to you with the substrate issue, how much did you know about the world of indoor farming?
Well, not much, because indoor farming is extremely small in Northern Europe. I mean, Holland and Belgium and Italy, Spain are huge in this market, but Northern Europe is pretty small. So it's not a big industry up here. So the people that contacted us the first time was from Holland, Belgium. So, but when they started, to discuss this with us, we understood, of course, we started to do some investigations and found that, first of all, substrate is much more easy to treat than soil. In soil, you have stones, you have, in a road project, you have scrape, you have metal, you have all kinds of things. So much more easy to treat like the substrate. So we knew it would be easier to get, the heat up and everything that we need, but we believed it was a small market in the beginning. But then, these guys said, you should come down to Holland to visit us and see, the farms here. So we did that, and then we also started to do the investigations, and we saw, it's I think in the substrate market, they say it's 80 million cubics at the moment. And it's supposed to grow to 250 million in 20 years. So it's a massive market, of course.
Yeah. What was the biggest surprise or aha for you, like, as you started to see, going to Holland, obviously, the pioneers in greenhouse technology, and a lot of people in the indoor farming space, especially vertical farms, are learning a hard lesson that maybe we should pay attention to what the pioneers in greenhouses have been doing. So what were you learning on those first visits?
Well, you believe, hear everything about, technology in the world, and, you believe that the farming is, far behind. And when you go down and meet these guys, and at the same time, I've been visiting Driscoll's in California also.
Oh,
and you get pretty, you understand that nothing is, they have control on everything. So how much moisture it is in the material and how much irrigation you should have today, because it's another day today and yesterday. The sun outside, the lightning, even somebody, without any sun, because everything is locked in a warehouse to control. So you have, these guys are professionals, so nothing left for, they don't take any risk on anything. And the interesting part is actually a few of the first one who contacted us was not contacting us because they wanted to recycle substrates. They contacted us because they wanted to steam the substrate before they took it in the first time. To have control, be 100% sure that this is clean.
Yeah.
So, that's how these guys are working. Nothing, they cannot take a risk on anything. If you have one disease in that cocoa choir or whatever you get, if something can happen, it comes from Sri Lanka and it can go by boat. What happens all this distance? So these guys wanted to treat it before they started to use it the first time.
That's so fascinating. Obviously, coming into this, when I started the show, there's a lot that I was just learning from the conversations and just learning how this issue with substrates is now a challenge because, you just assume that if they're purchasing something that it's going to be clean, that it's going to be sanitized, but what you discovered and what I'm learning as well is that's not the case. And I think doing it even before first use. And so you were at Driscoll's, which is obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, strawberry producer here. It's interesting to see that they were having these challenges as
Yeah,
well.
but that was on the earlier stage when we were running our machines. We are in dialogue with Driscoll's now as well about indoor production of strawberries. But at that time, we were working in their outdoor fields about steaming the soil in organic
Oh, okay.
strawberry, stuff like that. So you have done several
Yeah.
tests in their test farms together with UC
Yeah.
Davis to prove that steam works as well as the pesticides and the chemicals that they have available.
Yeah. And so you've done tests already, because I saw that you've got some posts on the site that you've shown how you're encouraging farmers not to reuse the substrates, because now with this technology, I think in the past there was probably a concern with all the pathogens. And there's, again, it's so interesting to learn, but the pathogens you mentioned there are Pythium and
Yeah, right.
Fusarium. Could you talk a little bit, I'm sure it's a part of an education process for you too, but can you talk a little bit about the specific pathogens that people may not be aware of?
Well, I mean, we have been steaming, like I said, for Driscoll's and for many other berry farmers around, and done trials and done, documentation. And like you said, Fusarium, and also in tomatoes is the same, right? But
Okay.
what we know is that together with several different universities, including them, UC Davis, and also locally here in Scandinavia, we have been testing exactly how high temperature and for how long we need to heat up the soil in order to kill all these organisms. So we know,
Okay.
for instance, that some weeds can take. Some seeds from weeds are difficult to kill. You have to go up to more than 90 C for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. While many organisms and fungi and nematodes and those things dies at maybe 60 or 65, 70 C, which means that then we use a lot less energy. It goes fast to treat it, stuff like that. So the most important thing is that we have lots of documentation that, I can show you that, Fusarium needs this temperature at this time. And then with our machine, we can control the temperature and time totally within the machine. So we know that at this level, 0% survives. So meaning that when we go 3 degrees higher and 1 minute longer, there are no one that's going to survive. So that's the whole basics of our system. We have documented that the machine can take it as long as we get the temperature and time. And then when you go above that, nothing survives.
I'm curious on the soil side, how do you find that balance? Because there are nutrients or spores and, mycelium that's helpful
Yep.
for soil, right? And so how does that balance
Well,
work?
going back to, when my father was working on this in early 2000, when he went to the university,
Yeah.
asked this guy, we're going to start, by steaming soil. And these guys now say, that you shouldn't do that, you will kill the good organisms in the soil, I would be worried about that, But today, we are working at so many different universities, and all of these guys say, especially within glasshouse farming or vertical farming, these guys can add whatever they want. The only thing which they really, really need is a clean media to grow in. And that's something we can guarantee. So it was a big question a long time ago, both with soil, but not so much with substrate, because these guys know that you have some structure things, you have some, how to keep the water, stuff like that, also within the structure and with the substrate. But the most important thing is that it is 100% clean. So, yeah. But we have done several tests, and steaming soil, I can show you pictures of, beautiful fields where we have been splitting the field. So we have one part which is steamed, one part which is not steamed.
Yeah.
And you can see how it boosts in the steam part. It's beautiful. Steam works. And not only works, it gives better harvest than non-steam in open fields.
I guess at some point there's some regeneration that happens, right? And the healthy organisms eventually come back into
We
the
have done
soil.
tests on that as well. We did that with a carrot farmer. We brought out the scientists out in the field. We steamed the field, and they went into the field after steaming and saw that, both good and bad organisms were gone totally just an hour after. And when they came back 2 weeks later, they found that 80% of the natural soil-borne life was back. So we got rid of the harmful organism that was there, and the
Wow.
natural life was back 2 weeks after. it comes from
interesting.
surroundings, from the soil beneath and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think they've said that mushrooms, that fungi, is the world's largest organism. I think because of, when they've done analysis and studies of how deep it goes underground and how they communicate with each other. So, I'm sure that's part of what's happening there.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
So as you started to become more aware of the indoor farming market and vertical farming, have you started to attend conferences and speak to indoor farmers?
Yeah, we have. But first, we went to one conference where we met this. Is called the Proof Center Hoogstraten, which is in Belgium, which is it's the biggest. It's the consortium of all berry growers, all strawberry growers in Belgium. And then we met this guy called Peter Melis, which is one of the head of research there. And he said, it's fascinating. I've seen what you have done with steam, and I think it's very interesting. But we have tried before with no success. So we said, I would like to do it again because it's a really push for us to do something about recycling of substrate. But I won't give you too much, I won't be too optimistic because we have tried before. But we have tried many things that people have done before. So we said, let's make it a try. So we sent one machine, one of our smaller machines, to Belgium in February this year, 100% electric. So it's a pretty cool machine. So most soil steaming is energy consumption. We need a lot of energy.
Yeah.
But this one is electric, so we use that one in Hoogstraten. So also very good to see footprint and things which are more and more important to the farmers, of course. We steamed the backshot 10 cubics of soil over substrate, which was used before. 50% was used one time before, and 50% was used four times before. And then the research at Hoogstraten made different blends. So 100% like clean new substrate, 100% recycled substrate, and even the substrate without any treatment. So reused again without steaming. And then after only a couple of weeks, they saw that the sprouts and everything of the steamed substrate performed very well. So they say, I don't want to give it too much hope, but it seems so far that, the substrate that had been used before and not steamed is going slow. It grows slow, and we can see that, it's a hard time.
Yeah.
But from the new substrate and the steamed substrate, we cannot see any difference. So we will continue following 2-week reports coming up. And then we saw, could not see, he was measuring roots development, measuring color, measuring, all the things that they do. And of course, the most important, shelf time and harvest. And when that was actually finished, we got most of the data. It was not totally finished, but we got most of the data before Green Tech. It's the huge fair I think it is both in the US and in Europe.
They do in Mexico, they do Green Tech Americas. Yeah.
So we got it actually right in time for that. So we knew that, this is, something that can be recycled. We can offer our, the customers you are meeting that, this is possible, especially within strawberries, because we have the proof now. And again, when the report came the week after, it showed that they could not, it was not, even in some of the tests they did, the steamed substrate performed better. You had a bit higher harvest, and the shelf time was the same. So, and again, I think this is, of course, fantastic news for us as a company, but I think also, we met some of the biggest substrate producers in Amsterdam as well. And they go, I was curious on how they would, act when they heard that, it's possible. But the interesting part was that what we saw is that these guys, were kind of positive. They say, it's no way that we can produce this much. If the market turns to 250 million cubes in 20 years, nobody knows how to get there. So I don't believe that you can recycle 100%. You always need to mix a little bit and stuff like that. But if we can take a part of that, so the farmer can be more, self-sufficient of what he already has on the farm. He can buy in a little extra to speed up the recycled substrate. I think you have a fantastic combination.
Yeah, there's got to be some cost savings, right, with being able to recycle.
That's of course. You can talk about sustainability, and you can, all of this is very good. I've been speaking to so many different farmers and everything, and everybody agrees that the sustainability thing is important. But if it's no saving money, it's impossible. Then somebody has to, to make up for that. So, and we say that we can recycle 1 cube of the substrate at the cost of maybe $5 to $10. And I don't know if the prices in Europe I think the prices in the US are actually higher, what I learned the other day, especially in strawberries in Florida, but I don't know, but approximately something between 50 and 60, 70, $80 per cube.
Okay.
And also, I mean, during COVID, I learned that, many farmers were stressed and didn't get delivery, stuff like that. So they want to be self-sufficient. They want to be able to keep as much as possible within their own farm. So I think that we can, by recycling 50% of the substrate or more, you can save a lot of money.
So are you still doing a lot of traveling, visiting farms?
That's what I like. Like I said, I come from a farm. I know these guys. I like these guys because, hardworking guys. And there are so many cool things within agriculture. But still, these guys are more like, yeah, but we have to do you have to solve our problems. You can have lots of AI, you can have measuring on harvest, you can have lots of cool things. But in the end of the day, the growing media must be good and the plants must be, doing well there.
Yeah, that's the most important thing. I saw that it looks like you recently changed roles. You went from CEO to CSO.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah. What drove that decision?
Well, all CEOs knows that, it's more, you have to organize a lot. You have to, to be working with people, right? And I'm not a really patient guy. I want, to move forward and I need to see thinking progress, So it was all natural. We got hands-on, extremely good people which has reputations on doing this and handling big companies, and also like ours, like a growing company. And I'm much better on working on, with farmers, with our customers and regulators and people around the company. So that was a good decision.
What's a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a good one. You always have to, as an entrepreneur, I see so many possibilities, like we have been through a few of them already. And we have still our, open field machine who can, run around in the field and steam the soil and make fantastic conditions to grow vegetables or berries. But we have stopped that because, we have to focus on the other concept, the container-based concept. So, and that's pity, because I know, I talk to these guys, I talk to many of the big ones in the US, I talk to them here in Europe, all over the place, and they say, why can't you just, bring us a machine? We want to buy it. Yeah. So these decisions, to focus instead of, going wide and trying to, that is hard decisions. I've spoken to farmers, coming in from the field in the evening, having meetings with us, and are desperate because they have potato cyst nematode and the whole field is infected. They can't do anything. They're sitting there, sweat and warm, and and I see they have big problems. And I know we have machines which could help them, but they are not commercialized. They're not ready yet. It's a tough one,
Yeah, because you see their pain and you know what they're going through, and that's their livelihood as well. So I think it's got to be frustrating.
I was down in Spain. California is huge in strawberries. The risk goes on these guys. Spain is also, down in Huelva. It's a huge strawberry area, and almost like Watsonville, strawberries everywhere. And then I met these farmers, again coming in from the farm and sitting down, and they are under a lot of pressure now because they have some chemicals, methansodium, is common in strawberry, but they are under a lot of pressure from the EU Commission. So they have only, like the Commission says every year, that next year it's finished. So they never know that they are getting one more permit and one more permit like for next year, but they are always under pressure. And they're stressed, that it's their life. And they know that steam can replace methansodium, but we don't have the machines ready. So, yes, we understand what you're saying, but at the moment we can't, in fact, help you. So that's a sad thing.
What's the timeline look like for that then?
At the moment, we parked it because now we have these machines up and running, and and I totally agree in the decision because we have people from all over the world coming here now to buy our containerized machines for steaming. So we have this demo day in the end of month, and we have people from all parts of the world coming, and none actually from the US, but we have 2 or 3 from Canada. We have people from Mexico. So it's the correct decision to focus on these machines, because it would be too much to try to go for everything. But I think we will not do anything more with the development of this open field steaming within at least 3 years.
It sounds like that probably needs to be spun off as a separate
It
division.
could have been. I mean, we haven't discussed that as well, but
Yeah.
because we have so much knowledge and insight into it, but we only have like 7, 8 engineers, and they are focusing totally on the other
Yeah.
machine.
And then the decision to focus on the container as the form factor, I think, is smart because obviously within indoor farming, everybody knows about containers, container farms, but there's a reason for that. Probably makes shipping so much easier
Shipping is here, and
once it's
also
in that form.
in that
Yeah.
machine we have total control. I mean, you pour this soil in one end, and it goes through a system where we
Yeah.
have sensors and computer system to control everything. So we have
Ah.
full control, and it's much more easy. So if we started with the other machine first, we would probably still be striving to
Yeah.
get it ready for the market. So it was a good
Yeah.
decision. It was almost ready, and when we focused with all our engineers on that machine, we got it ready 2 years ago.
So if we're having this conversation a year from now, where do you think you'll be and what type of progress would you like to make?
For the container-based concept, we will be definitely in North America, but we are starting on Canada. Also
Okay.
about, there are lots of things going on now with taxes and everything. So it's
Yeah.
as a European company, it's much more easy to get into Canada. And we also have lots
Yeah.
of interest there. So we will start up by having machines there and people there. So when you send a machine over,
Yeah.
we will also have technicians in the market to control that market and even
Okay.
salesmen. And then we have 3 different sizes of machines. So we have like huge machine for the big construction project and the really big substrate farmers, which can treat 30, 40 cubic per hour. But then you
Yeah.
also have small machines for farmers, which, again, this industry is so focused on it. They don't want us to share machines because, I don't want to have your pathogens in my... So they want their own machinery.
Yeah.
And then we need a small
Okay.
machinery for, smaller farmers, which has, maybe 400, 500 cubes per year. So they can have their own machine at a pretty good, reasonable price and also be able to recycle. So, so I think it will be in North America, it will be wide over in Europe, and it will be both within the construction business here in road projects and stuff like that in Northern Europe, but even more within indoor farming. But I hope, maybe not in 1 year, but maybe in 2 years, we also will be in the US.
Okay. Sounds like you have an ambitious roadmap, but it sounds like there's a big demand.
Yeah, totally. I think what we call a no-brainer. I mean, sustainability and cost saving, and we have documentation that it works. So what more can I ask for? We will pay them this machine in 1 year.
Yeah. Are you going to start to make yourselves more visible in conferences like Green Tech, more?
Yes, but also on the more conference thing, more for the for the researchers. We are going to there's a huge one in Europe now in September, which is a substrate conference only. So it's only like professors, doctors within the industry which are there, and of course we need to be there to show them that we have made this possible now, because they are the start for to develop this market and get into. People trust what they see when these guys have been testing the equipment.
Just when you think that there's the most niche market, then they all have conferences, and there's a conference just for substrates. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm going to a strawberry conference in Holland in September as well.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you reaching out, Hans. I think this is fascinating. I love learning this. My audience loves learning this, all the different ways, to see what's happening in the space. And technologies that were meant for traditional ag now making their way and into the indoor farming space, I think is fascinating. So it's been so interesting to hear your journey as well, growing up on a farm, not imagining that you would be returning to the farm. And now you're working in new technologies like indoor farming. So I imagine it's been interesting. When you look back, sometimes you're in the day-to-day, it's hard to see the progress, but sometimes you look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe this is the journey that I've been on. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. It's also very nice talking to you as well. And I hope that we can catch up when a year or two ahead, and then we can have a new chat about if machines are in the market in the US or not.
Well, I'm definitely going to make it to Green Tech. I keep saying
we discussed a couple of weeks ago if we not should go to the Green Tech in Mexico as well. So both Holland and Mexico next time. So then maybe we can catch up.
Yeah, for sure. Where's the best place for folks to? The website is solysteam.com.
Solysteam.com, yeah.
Solysteam.com, yeah. And so we'll have that link in the show notes, and I'll provide a link to your LinkedIn as well in case people want to reach out and connect with you.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Harry.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.